As Jennifer said in the beginning, these two stories are an account of one event in the early church. The first one is Luke's account of the event, and the second is Paul's. It's called the Jerusalem Council, and things have been simmering, and conflict has been growing in the early church in a way since its beginning. And the issue is around what is necessary to be a Christian. What is core, non-negotiable? Does one, in a sense, does one need to be circumcised? Does one need to keep the kosher laws? Does one need to keep all the laws of Moses in order to be a Christian? Or is one a Christian because one accepts Christ and one receives the grace of God? This is a big debate. People are going around snooping on other people. Are they eating properly? Are they obeying the law properly? They're getting reported. Paul is eventually called on the carpet at this Jerusalem council. Some people have snooped on him and reported him, and he has to come in and justify what he's preaching and so on. The resolution is different in Acts than it is in Paul's account in Galatians. Luke has this tendency to kind of cover over conflict. He does say here that there was no small debate, but this was really contentious. This division in the early church was really deep, but Luke kind of soft pedals it. Paul, on the other hand, gets sarcastic, and he just says, they're reputed leaders. I didn't listen to them. I don't give them the respect that they want because they don't deserve the respect they want. Paul kind of lays it out. The resolution in Acts is as long as you are not don't pollute yourself with the worship of idols, don't eat meat that is strangled in its own blood, and are not unchaste, you're okay. For Paul, the only thing that's necessary is you remember the offering for the poor. Paul is much more general. You might say, well, who cares? Who cares about this debate in the early church on whether one needed to keep kosher laws in order to be Christian, whether one needed to be circumcised in order to be Christian? Who cares about it? It's still a debate, and it's always been a debate in the church. What is non-negotiable? What is core? What is necessary in order to be a Christian? I mean, the United Methodist Church is going through that now. What is core? What is necessary to be a Christian? Many of us were brought up in churches where not only is it the denominational issue, it's a local church issue, and it might even be a parent's issue. What is core to be a Christian? I was brought up that you don't drink, smoke, dance, play cards, or go to movies on Sunday. And that was core. That was core. I remember the first time we went to a movie on Sundays. My gosh. We parked in the parking lot downtown, and you had to go to movies downtown because there weren't any in the suburbs. And I just remember my mom looking behind herself the whole time we were going, in case somebody from the church saw us. I remember the first time my youth group, oh gosh, I had to go through so many layers of debate in order to have a square dance in the basement of the church. It was core for Christians not to dance in the church. You've probably heard stuff like that. As you were brought up, how literally must one take the Bible? Can women wear pants in church and still be Christians? I served a church where once there was an earring code for the women in the choir, that their earrings could only hang down so far. I don't know what they do now with men with earrings. Yeah. Do you have to believe in the virgin birth? Do you have to believe in creationism? Do you have to believe in the bodily resurrection in order to be a Christian? Do you have to be baptized by immersion to be a Christian? These become important questions. What is necessary? What is core? Erasmus, who wrote 700 years ago, was a Christian humanist, which now sounds almost like a contradiction in terms. He wrote a book called The Praise of Folly, making fun of all these things that were necessary to believe in order to be a Christian. And he said, the disciples, Jesus' original followers, had it so easy. They didn't have to explain transubstantiation and consubstantiation and what happened to the bread at communion. They didn't have to explain that. All they had to do was follow Jesus. They didn't have to explain the virgin birth. They just had to follow Jesus. And you think, well, Jesus did make it kind of simple, didn't he? He just said, love the Lord, your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that's what Jesus asked. But we've kind of layered on all this other stuff that makes it what is necessary to be a Christian. C.S. Lewis talks about one of the best ways to divert a person from actually being a Christian is what he calls Christianity and. Get a person to believe Christianity and say something else is essential. Christianity and voting the right way. Christianity and biblical literalism. Christianity and believing a certain way of baptism or a certain way of dressing. And he says what happens is you forget Christianity and focus on the other stuff as more important. When John Wesley was in his heyday, he followed a principle on what is essential and what is necessary. And the quotation is, in essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. And in all things, charity, love. I'm going to repeat that and punctuate it for you, for those taking notes. In essentials, comma, unity, semicolon. In non-essentials, comma, liberty, semicolon. In all things, comma, love, period. Imagine you're going on a journey. You pack for your trip. Say you're going to the North Pole. What is essential to pack? Is it essential to pack a swimming suit? Is it essential to pack a Hawaiian shirt? Yes. Thank you. Okay, you can leave. Okay, is it essential to pack flip-flops? Yeah. Yeah, it's not. What is essential to pack if you're going to the North Pole? Yeah. Is it essential to pack, a case of wine? Don't answer that. Yeah. Is it essential to pack an organ or fine china? No. What is essential is to pack winter coats and sweaters and boots and maybe snowshoes and maybe food that will last and nourish. We're on a trip to God. What is essential? Well, I would argue what is essential is grace. And in the Wesleyan understanding, grace expresses itself in three ways. It's essential to have an understanding of what's called prevenient grace, which is God's love that comes to us seeking us, God's love that reaches out to us, God's love that loves us in spite of who we are, God's love that seeks us and wants to be in relationship with us. That grace, I would say, that expression of grace is essential. And so is the justifying grace that says, I want you, and I want to be in relationship with you. And when we say yes to that grace, we enter into a relationship with God. I would say that is essential. And then there's the understanding of sanctifying grace, where God's grace works within us to transform us into new creations, into people who are more loving and more patient and more self-controlled and more generous and more merciful, to make us into the people that God has in mind. I would say that is essential for being a Christian. The understanding of grace. And in the Acts passage, they say, God's grace is given to all, and because it's given to all, there is no distinction between us, which in a way means we're in community. For everyone here, there's a place at the table. That is essential, that understanding of grace that puts us all on the same level and kind of washes away differences. I would say what is essential as it relates to grace is an understanding of death and resurrection. Not just Jesus' death and resurrection, but the understanding that we die to our old self. We die to that self of greed. We die to that self that's driven nuts by self-centeredness. And we are transformed by grace to become other-directed and new. We die to the old self and resurrect to the new. I would say that grace understanding and the spin-offs of community and acceptance are essential for this journey that we're on to God. So those are the essentials. In essentials, unity. Let's agree on grace as essential. Then in non-essentials, liberty. Wesley wrote this sermon. It's my favorite Wesley sermon, called The Catholic Spirit, where he says, if you love the Lord, put your hand in mine. And he goes on to say, we might disagree on lots of things. To be ignorant of many things and mistaken in some is a human condition. We may disagree on many things, but if you love the Lord, put your hand in mine. We may disagree on how to do baptism, whether you sprinkle, pour, or immerse, or whether you should do baptism, he says. We may disagree on how to do communion, whether you sit in the pews and take it from a little shot glass, or come forward and receive the bread and dip it in the cup, or whether you kneel at the rail. We may disagree on that. But if you love the Lord, put your hand in mine. We may even disagree if you have communion or not. And Wesley says, these are non-essentials. We may disagree on how you organize a church. Is the minister appointed or is the minister interviewed? It's non-essential. There is so much that is non-essential, that we need to give liberty to others to think as they want to think and be as they want to be. Whether you wear earrings or not is unessential. Whether you wear flip-flops or shoes is non-essential. Paul goes so far as to say, in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. It's non-essential. Is it really essential whether I'm gay or straight? Does it really matter? Does it really matter if I'm male or female? Yeah, it matters to my identity and it shapes who I am. But does it really matter if a preacher is gay or straight? Does it really matter if the preacher is male or female, black or white? It doesn't matter. It's non-essential. I would argue so much of what churches go to war over is non-essential. And people should have the liberty to be who they are. Then finally, in all things, even if we're debating over essential and non-essential, and I obviously believe that the debate the Methodist Church is having now is over a non-essential. In all things, love. We don't demonize the other. We don't exclude the other. We receive the other and love the other. In all things, love. Augustine said, have love and do whatever you want. Because love is the boundary that dictates how we treat other people. We do whatever we want, but we love them. So that it determines how we interact with people. We don't avoid them. We don't gossip about them. We don't treat them as second class. In all things, dealing with those who disagree with us, dealing with those who agree with us, in all things, love. When we were talking about this Wesleyan belief in essentials unity and non-essentials liberty, and in all things love, we were talking about, it's obviously what is necessary and what is non-necessary, what is essential and what is non-essential. And a person in our group, we were in the parlor, and some of you have been up to the parlor, and there's a quilt hanging there, and the person said, I've been sitting here looking at this quilt during this discussion, and I was trying to figure out what was necessary to be in this quilt. This was the quilt where we asked people in the church to bring in something that was important in their life, in their faith journey, that we would make a church quilt. And the person said, well, it seemed to me that a requirement to be on this quilt was that everything be the same size square patch, that everything be alike in its size. And then he said, as I looked closer, there are all kinds of different shapes. Not everything is the same size square. There are circles, there are rectangles, there are long blocks, there are dresses, there are socks. There's a huge variety of things. It seems like any shape counted, any color counted, any material counted. All that seemed to matter was that the quilter could use it. And that's probably the ultimate essential in the Christian church. The ultimate essential is, can God use you? Are we essential to God's ministry? And that's how we all fit together whether we're gay or straight, black or white, male or female, whether we wear shorts or flip-flops or dress fancy or have jobs or whatever our politics are we essential to God, who puts it together to make a work of beauty and usefulness? May we see ourselves as essential to God's ministry and all people as essential to that ministry. May it be so. Amen. Amen.